So I had introduced you all to Sunil towards the end of the last session. Sunil is a very long-term L&D professional. He's also been a colleague of mine at Edelweiss. He's worked a lot in different industries, and what I see him as is a learning champion. He's been the head of L&D, so he thinks strategically about learning, but he's also a great facilitator. I'm sure you'll have a great learning experience. Sunil, could you tell them a little bit about the highlights of your career and then take on the session?
Sure. Thank you, Manisha. Thanks for those kind words. I'm good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to be a part of this, journey that you've all undertaken. And in fact, I was a part of the previous session briefly, though. But towards the end, of course, I was there. A bit about myself, have a little about 30 years of experience, ranging from industries in the print media, in the FMCG, and in BFSI. That is about 30 years of experience in terms of industry. With respect to the roles that I've handled business roles which encompasses P&L responsibilities, etc. And I've also managed industrial relations in the HR side of the business. While the normal HR is something that when I say normal, I'm saying normal because as compared to industrial relations. And I've actually handled the most interesting part of the Indian subcontinent, other than of course the unions of Kerala. The other unions of India that are very, very famous are unions of Mumbai. Yeah, so you have the MNS, you have the Shiv Sena, and you have the Swabiman Sena. Between the three Senas, we had to deal with some interesting stuff. So that's been some amazing experience that I've had on the HR side of also. On the learning side, have been on the learning side, on the sales training side, which is predominantly ROI. The session ends and the results have to come. I've been on the learning, which is on the OD, organization development side, which is right from handling the competency frameworks, the job descriptions, etc., and the works. So that's a bit about myself in terms of my work experience. But I think so. I really truly enjoy, engaging with people, and I truly enjoy, participating in learning workshops. This session today that we're going to have is going to be some bit of learning and some bit of workshopping. That's about me. Manisha, back to you.
Yeah, so we bring on our panelists. Srivatsan?
Yeah.
Could you talk to our participants and tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm very happy to be here, and I think it's the same group that I addressed, about a few weeks back. We were talking about a journey of life. I think people, if the same people, then I've spoken about it there. I'll just quickly summarize. I have 37 years of working experience. I joined pretty early in my life. At the age of 21, I joined Asian Paints, and I joined Asian Paints in the front line, and spent 32 years with Asian Paints. Did all the sales roles, and went on to become the head of sales for Asian Paints. That's a very high point for me and for the company. A frontliner actually becoming head of sales. And then in 2018, JSW was setting up the paint, business. So I joined JSW in 2018, and it's about 6 years now with JSW. So it's about roughly 38 years in the same industry, but it's 4 decades of how industry would have evolved over a period of time, and I've seen all of that actually. So quite happy to be here, and today I'll be quite happy to share some of my experiences. I always believe that knowledge is available. Okay, today knowledge is accessible. I think the conversations on experiences will be worthwhile. That's how I would like to look at it today actually. Thank you, Manisha.
Now I welcome Pradeep to our session. This is the first time that Pradeep is coming on to this. So hi Pradeep. And Pradeep, one of the things which is common between Srivatsan and Pradeep is that they are very, very long stint employees in their current organizations. So Pradeep spent about 23 years in Godrej Consumer. He's done multiple roles, through the organization and grown in the organization. And he's also an MBA from MDI Gurgaon. Pradeep, would you share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Manisha, and good morning to you, and good morning to everybody on the screen right now. Right. Frankly speaking, I'm a little nervous and anxious. You know, uh, public speaking is never a great thing, right? And somebody who is an introvert, it becomes even more difficult. So let me see if I can do justice to what we are here for. Uh, I would kind of say, I've spent about 27 years in this industry. All of it is FMCG. I was with Dabur for about 3 years. Then I moved into Cargill Foods, then into Godrej Consumer. So that's the 27 years, and 23 years of that has been with GCPL in the FMCG business. Yeah. What I'm excited about is, I guess most of you are in the middle management kind of roles right now. Some of you on the verge of breaking into the senior management, and some of you just entered the middle management cadre, right? And I think it is probably the most ignored set of management team. While you are young and junior, people take care of you with a lot of training and inputs. While you are senior, anyway, you're taken care of, right? I think in the middle is when people miss the bus. And I think the middle is the most critical, because very often when we speak to CEOs, they say we care about employees, we care about customers, and so on and so forth. But if you go and check with the frontline team, the disengagement or the cracks are visible there, right? I think the issue is not that the CEO did not intend well. The fact is, in the middle management, sometimes are not communicated enough, or they don't communicate downwards. So I think this is the most critical phase for the organization, and this is the most critical phase for team members here. So let's hope we are able to do some shining light on those aspects here. And I'm glad that we have Mr. Watson, who's a veteran in that sense. Yeah. Look forward to Sunil's interaction.
Thank you, Pradeep. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Watson, for sharing a bit about yourself. And as we go along in this discussion, I'm sure we'll have more opportunities to understand each other a little more, and also the participants. But thank you very much. Um, as I was listening to both of you, there is, between the two of you, we have roughly about 6 decades of experience available for discussion in this forum, and we'd like to leverage a lot more on this. And that brings me to this interesting situation that I've personally also faced, and I thought I'll bounce it off with the both of you to understand a little more and deeper from your perspective. This word that we've all heard about, the VUCA word, and I'm sure a lot of us on this forum know about it, which is volatile, uncertain, ambiguity, and complexity being there. I felt that when I started off my career, that the VUCA world will get over in 10 years, right? Then there came the next decade, and I thought the VUCA world will get over now. Then came the next 10 decades. So it's been 3 decades of my working myself, and I didn't find the VUCA world ending. I've just realized that the pace of the VUCA-ness, if I may call it, has significantly increased. And in this VUCA world, the experience that I have had is that the stabilizing factor largely has been around the people and the processes that one creates about. So I'm posing this question to both the gentlemen, and in the case of who would like to go first. Is that while we are as managers dealing with this VUCA-ness in this particular world.
Sunil, can I just ask a question? What do you mean by VUCA?
Oh yes, I did talk about that a little while back. And I'll again re-elaborate that terminology. It is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. This is actually a term that has been borrowed from the US military, right? And this terminology actually represents the changing dynamics of our lives, personal, professional, and business. I mean, this is actually, this is true for all of us in our personal lives also, but I'll park that for some other time. On the professional side is what I'm looking at. But thanks, Manisha, for helping me reiterate this once again for the benefit of everyone. So, Vatsanji and Pradeepji, in your experience, when you've had to deal with this entire volatility, given this experience, what comes to your mind in terms of the biggest challenges that you've faced? And very specifically, going on the people.
Actually, your voice is getting feeble. Actually, there's a problem. I think. Yeah, can you repeat the question?
I said, and can everyone else hear me?
Yeah, now we are able to hear you properly.
Now it's
Okay, perfect. So I was just saying that, in your experience in the last 30 years, 37 years, I heard you say, the VUCA-ness has only increased. And as I said, the stabilizing factor has normally been the people and the processes. In this evolutionary journey, how do you feel, and specifically on the people side, what all changes have you seen that has happened over the years?
So I'll go first on this. See, I've seen over the last 37 years, like what you said, I think the VUCA was always there, Sunil. Only thing is that that I think the definition has come now. And if you look at the context of that particular time, it would have been a VUCA at that particular time. Okay, businesses have always been very competitive, and so I think the challenge that anybody faces is that how well are you able to adapt to the changing expectations? Okay, today, in fact, I think things are a little more clear than the earlier times. Today we talk about Gen Z, then we talk about Alpha. There are a certain amount of definitions which are there. People are trying to bucket and then try and see. Okay, so somewhere down the line, one has to be tuned into the changing times, and one has to actually accordingly unlearn, which is very, very important. Okay, and that is what I have seen. And I was going through this interesting conversation that was happening, just before we started, as to I did not have time to do this. Okay, and next time I will send this, boss. This will not work in this VUCA world. Okay, you guys have now signed up for something which is very important. Okay, and then the prioritization will become important. The reason why you guys have signed up is to help you to to traverse through these changing times. There's a lot of learning that you're going to have now, and if you don't do those case studies, and if you don't do those questions, then you're not learning. Okay, and between all of you, let me tell you that I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning to actually crystallize my thoughts. Okay, because 37 years of experience, you can't just come and talk, because it has to be modeled and crystallized. Okay, so I think that kind of a commitment is required for learning. Okay, and I have seen, Sunil, to answer your question, learning and unlearning organizations have prevailed over a period of time. Actually.
Thank you, Vatsanji. And just to
can I just request all of you to have a mix of languages while talking?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, Vatsanji, I'm so glad that you mentioned, and I'm just summarizing some of the things that I really picked on, which, resonates very strongly, is our ability to, adopt. कोई भी changes जो होता है, our willingness, और हम जितनी जल्दी से उसको adopt कर सकें, that agility that we have to show. The second is, our ability to actually work through Gen Z, Gen Z, the millennials and everything. Interestingly, you made a point कि ये VUCA world तब भी था, and maybe उस time के Gen Z हम थे. Right?
Yeah.
So, so the people, of my age at that time would have found me a Gen Z at that time, or a millennial at that time, or whatever that term. There weren't any terminologies like this, but they would have been as uncomfortable as the leaders today. So this is, I would say, this is a continuum that you've just spoken of. The third, great point that I heard you make was, our ability to unlearn. जो हमने सीखा है उसको वापस से ना हटा के नया सीखना एक बहुत important चीज हो जाती है.
And Sunil, I just want to stress on this, because unlearning doesn't come naturally to anyone. Unlearning is a conscious, it's a consciously done. Okay, unlearning is a continuous thing. If you don't unlearn, see, they always say, if you don't unlearn, something new never comes into your mind. You need to keep it aside. You need to bundle it aside. You'll say, because these are 5 things I will never do again. That's how the unlearning will happen, because I see a lot of people struggle into this. I've now worked for JSW Paints. There are people who have come from conventional companies. Unlearning is very difficult. People are trying that X company's strategies in this Y company. It doesn't work. One has to actually come unlearn and then come start again. Actually, so yeah. I want you all to make this point that unlearning is the biggest thing that you do very, very consciously. Actually,
thank you. In fact, one more point that you made resonates very strongly, and I'm sure on managing the competing priorities. So time management जिसे हम कहते हैं, वो competing priority, as long as our ability to read onto the caselet and take the quiz is a competing priority, and I'm sure there's something more eventful that may have happened जिसने ये समय ले लिया होगा participants का, but our ability to prioritize something and get it done. And on some point in time, I'm sure Manisha would have done those sessions on time management earlier. But we'll of course talk about it a little later. Thanks, Vatsanji, for sharing there. Pradeep ji, just posing the same question to you, basis your experience. If you can maybe use the pyramid approach and something incremental if you feel that you'd like to share, or an important point that you'd like to make on the same points.
Yeah, I think one, VUCA is reality, right? And to me, I think without VUCA, life is boring. Imagine अगर जिंदगी में कोई मतलब उतार चढ़ाव है ही नहीं, तो फिर मतलब मजा ही कहाँ आएगा, right? And for sales people here, it is that challenge which makes life easy, life very interesting. अगर टारगेट हो रहे हैं, तो देन तो क्या ही मजा है उसमें, right? जब टारगेट नहीं हो रहा है, जब there is pressure, that's when life becomes interesting. So I think VUCA is critical, VUCA is essential. Adding to what Mr. Vatsan said, I think VUCA to me is a great opportunity. If you look at all the major inventions or discoveries or changes, dramatic changes that have happened across the globe over last, so many centuries, it is because of some black swan event that has happened. COVID is one thing, right? आज अगर हम virtually meeting कर रहे हैं, तो ये जो सीख है हमें मतलब COVID से मिला, right? I don't think before COVID we were all used to, we would have assembled in a hall, met 40 people across face to face. I mean, there are advantages, but the fact is this learning came from COVID, right? Notebandi hui, right? And today, if you see the digital transformation that has happened in this country, that was a very volatile situation, right? Notebandi was not something many of us would have seen or would probably see the next lifetime of ours. And look at what has happened to the UPI business in this country. We are now globally the leading country in terms of digital. So there is, I think it's VUCA which brings in a lot of opportunities, and that's where I think we should focus on. In this crisis, in this chaos, is there an opportunity for me to create something? That's my point of view.
Thank you, Pradeep. That resonates so strongly. Both of you mentioned a very important point in this, Mika, was our ability to adapt to change. And change is a constant. While it's a cliche statement, it is also a reality of today's world, and it was always there. Now, each one of you has spent a little over about 2 or 3 decades in your businesses, and Sanjay about almost 3.5 decades. You've gone through various changes in your organization. And one of the biggest changes that any leader and people aspiring on this forum that we also have are the future leaders of their organization, while they are leaders at the middle, quite often termed as the missing middle, right? And I call it the interesting middle in an organization. So they are actually poised to take their larger roles in their organizations. And since they are at the cusp of moving into larger roles, you've all actually seen those changes in your lives. You've actually grown from, and Vatsalji's profile I was looking at, and he's actually grown from the FLS rank to being the head of sales. So when you actually transition from this, one of the biggest changes that one needs to make possibly is the way one has to deal with people. If I may invite both of you to talk about, and Vatsalji, first I'll go to you. If you can maybe talk us through about, how did you manage those changes? Because, your Asian Paint stint, if I may pick it up, you've actually grown from an FLS to a head of sales, right? And in that role, you would have peers who would have been aspirants to that role. You would have people who would have been wanting to come from outside organization into that roles. There would have been perceptions within the organization while your own elevation was happening. How does that come by, and what all did you need to bring about as a change when each of these transitions happened for yourself and for the people around you?
See, I'll quickly summarize this. See, basically, Sunil, what happens is that when I joined in the front line, okay, I could never imagine that I will one day become head of sales in this company, because Asian Paints was a day zero, in all the institutes. It was a role model company, and so I will just share with you in terms of how did this happen actually. Okay, now one thing that I was clear that, I need to be the best at what I am doing. Okay, this was my core thing. Okay, if I was the front line, I must be the best front line. Okay, so I am completely focused on my front line role. Okay, what are the expectations that I have the clarity on expectations? What else can I do? So if I have to be the best, then what other skills I need to develop so that I can be better than the people who are there. I'm competing against myself. Okay, so I am the best, frontline. I'm continuously learning. Okay, and let me tell you that I was one of those frontliners who became an area manager in Asian Paints from a frontline to area manager. Okay, because I'm talking about the years of 87, 88 and all, where Asian Paints used to actually go directly to the institutes, and they used to get those top class management trainees, and there was no need for them to really look at a frontliner to come there, because all this were available. The quality of quality of people were available. So from there, then I was seen as an aspirant for that, and I was one of the first to actually move from a frontline to area manager. And when I move into that area manager role, and suddenly, I'm sure that all of you have faced this, that suddenly you are into a group which is experienced, they're skilled, and you're sitting there, you're looking at their presentations, and you think, oh my God, when can I do all this? How beautiful communication they're making. I have 5 things to share. I used to think that for 5 things to share, kahan se aata hai? Okay, then you're continuously again learning. Then you start from zero again. Okay, and then the endeavor has always been that now I need to be the best area manager. Okay, and what does it make me the best area manager? I think then those things are picked up. Okay, and when you become the best area manager, then obviously there is a next opportunity that comes in the regional manager role. When you get into that role, you want to become the best regional manager, and then the next role is the divisional manager, and then finally it's the head of sales, head of sales. Now, in the journey that we go through, and I'm sure that all of you, all the people here are present, see, up to a certain point, if you're very good now, you can climb. Okay, I'm just saying that today in my company, there are 18 positions for regional manager. Okay, now after the regional manager, then it narrows down to 4 zonal managers. So there are 18 people there, and the company will tomorrow have to choose from the 18 to 4. Okay, and that's where I feel that middle management stress comes, because until now, okay, if you're good, you have enough positions to fill in, and this is where this thing comes. And this is where I would like to share with you all that I was not focusing on becoming the next from the regional manager to zonal manager. I was focusing on becoming the best regional manager, because I knew that if I'm the best, somewhere down the line, I will make it. But the focus was not to become the zonal manager. So I think this is one core point that I would like to share. The second thing that you said is about the aspirants. Okay, and what happens is that at each of these levels, you will have to actually travel through times where some of them would have been your colleagues, or some of them would have been your seniors. Then you end up becoming their boss. Now that's something which very early in my life I've learned that contributions to people is a virtue. Okay, by nature, you're not competing with anyone. Okay, what is by nature, if you are able to contribute to others' success, you always find yourself being at a center where people are able to help you. So I just would like to share the name of one book. If you guys have not read, it is quite worthwhile. I don't know how many of you have read. It's a very classic book. It can actually be useful at any point in time in your life. I've read it so many times. I still read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey. I'm saying it is relevant. It is time immemorial. Even after 10 years you read, in that context, you will still find that it is useful. I think that has really helped me. Okay, and the last thing I'd like to sum up here is that in terms of it is very important that as you move up, there will be people who will be looking up to you, okay, for support. And I reached a stage where I started enjoying their successes. Okay, and मेरा तो होगा, मतलब डिपेंडिंग ऑन मैं किस तरह से मैं काम कर रहा हूँ, लेकिन सबसे ज़्यादा मतलब सेटिस्फैक्शन जो मिलता है कि मतलब मेरे नीचे जो काम कर रहे हैं, टुमारो व्हेन आई फाइंड देम दैट यू नो दे हैव डन वेल, it's a huge contribution. Sunil, I'll tell you, I mean, I don't want to be humble here. I get a lot of messages on Teachers' Day saying that, boss, thank you very much for contributing. It was a pleasure working with you. And I think this is my greatest achievement, is what I would say. I think moving into that requires a lot of, I would not say maturity, but I would say confidence in oneself. Because you know you will hold on to something because if you're insecure, I think by giving you will find. तो मैं इसलिए क्यों बता रहा हूँ कि अगर आपका नेचर ये है, कल उन लोगों का अगर तुम बॉस बनोगे ना, they will still respect you because you were never competing with them, you were never holding back anything, you were always the guy who was looking after his success. तो वो खुश ही होगा ना, क्यों खुश नहीं होगा? अगर आप उसका बॉस बनोगे तो वो खुश ही होगा. So I think this is how one looks at it. I think this is my journey, Sunil.
Thank you, Vatsal. Actually, some brilliant thoughts that I have picked up. Is one, try to be your best. In the role that you are doing is something that that's actually helped you in that journey. Second, you've talked about contribution to people is a virtue, and helping them learn. And you talked about the Teachers' Day. Accolades that you keep getting from your team members. That's some good stuff. That leaders can pick up. This book that you mentioned, the 7 Habits. In fact, it is something that I also personally very believe in, because each time I have actually picked up that book, I have been triggered to unlearn something actually, and relearn something. So that's a brilliant book. And if leaders on this call are taking that away, it's a book that you may want to keep it as a Bible or a Granth, whatever you may want to call it, for you in terms of being successful. Pradeepji, coming to you, I think so. You've, in your experience, you've actually managed a lot of transitions. You've also grown from the ranks, and you've also mentioned, managed a lot of mergers and amalgamations, and the cultural differences that may come by, and also some of the areas in terms of mindset. So, if I was actually to ask you, what are the challenges that you faced when you had to integrate different teams? Sometimes some of those team members, when they get integrated into your channels or your businesses, there could be peers. There could be seniors who may have had to report to somebody who may not be as senior in terms of age and experience. In terms of designation, maybe they were senior, but otherwise they may have not been as senior. And each organization and each individual brings a certain set of mindsets. How does one deal with that complexity? Because all leaders in this group who are here, at some point in time in their careers, they would be dealing with this, where you actually merge channels. And, in my last session with, which I was there participating with them, they're handling a lot of multi-channel complexities today. While they're handling a channel, but there is a complexity, and sooner or later, they will grow into a level where these channels will all report to them. Currently, they have one channel handling that is there. Soon they will have more channels, and they'll have the entire company they may even acquire. So your experience in that is something, 2 bits on that, Pradeep ji.
Yeah, Sunil, I think you asked quite a few questions. So I'll answer the first one, which is key. When you become the boss of your peers, till now you were all similar, and suddenly you become the supervisor and they become a team member, right? So how does things work? I think there are 3 things which I have realized. One, in every organization there is something called power dynamics or power play. Now power, मतलब कई लोगों को गलत लगता है कि power is like, it is not the political power that we are talking about, जहाँ पे मतलब हम जाके politics करते हैं, वो वाला power नहीं है. Power is essential in organization, and power is critical. And if you guys think power is something negative, you need to change your thought on this. Power is essential. For example, let me tell you, if you are working in an organization where there are 4 zonal managers or 6 regional managers, whatever that designation role is, if you were to write down and check amongst the 6 of you, 1 of you or 2 of you would be in the top 2 in that sense, right? Amongst those peers. So if you are an ASM, I'm sure amongst those 20-30 ASMs, 2 or 3 of them are top, and you will also rate them at the top. Organization knows it, those people also know it. When you are an RSM or a division manager, 4 या 6 लोग होंगे, उसमें से एक आध are clearly are outliers. उनको ही पता है, आपको ही पता है, कंपनी को ही पता है, right? So that power dynamic is something which you need to be sure that is working in your favor. The second one to me is when you start in these new roles, when you become a supervisor suddenly, don't force the issue. मतलब थोड़ा सा time और space देना पड़ता है. There are three things that happen with team members at that point in time. The first one is some of them would say, ठीक है, he's a good guy, let me accept, let me move forward, let me also continue in my role. So that's the first set of people. The second set of them is नहीं यार ये नहीं होगा मुझसे, I can't work with this guy, मैं इसके साथ काम कर चुका हूँ, he might be a good guy but मुझे अब इनके नीचे काम नहीं करना. So he will attract or she will attract in that sense. There are this third set of people, right, which is the most dangerous, which is कि वो कंपनी में रहेंगे और आपको काम करने नहीं देंगे. Right? They are what we call as blockers, and you will have to deal with all three. Attrition होगा तो मैनेजमेंट बोलेगा ये सडनली क्या हो गया यार, आपके आते मतलब लोग छोड़ गए. अगर लोग रहते हैं तो ठीक है, they will eventually lead to success. But the blockers are the big challenge. So I think you'll have to have your own strategy for what percentage of them become blockers, what percentage will attract, what percentage are you trying to retain, and that comes from the power dynamics you already have in the organization. The third one is, and I strongly believe in this, people leave people. People don't leave organizations. Right? अब जब आप बॉस बन गए, आपका अगर हिस्ट्री है कि you are a toxic boss, right? And you were not a great people leader, then people will not continue. I think Srivatsan sir ने बताया आपको कि he is considered to be a mentor and a teacher. अगर लोग आपको वैसे देखते हैं तो then many of them would kind of retain themselves and say ठीक है, let me try, if this goes well. They may not be 110% convinced, but they are willing to give a shot. Right? But अगर वो नहीं है, अगर आपका reputation इतना खराब है कि आप toxic हो, right? And they don't see you as a people leader, they don't see you as contributing to their career or life, they will immediately attract, और जब तक नौकरी ना मिले, they will be the blockers in the organization. So I think the fact of the matter and the solution to this is, start being the people boss that you want to be. In other words, you behave the leader that you always wished you had. आपको लगता है कि ऐसा कोई बॉस होता तो कैसा रहता है. You have to become that today. ताकि अगर जब आप आगे प्रमोट होके जाओगे तो you will have team members willing to support you and stay with you. That's my 3 bits on this.
Thank you, Pradeep. That's
So,
very, very
I just want to
insightful.
add. I just want to add on to this. I'm sure
Please,
that
please.
I'm sure that all of you will be able to relate to it. There are some people who are very great with the boss, but niche na, it is completely different. Okay, so you need to be very careful about that, because I've seen people where down below people say boss iske paas kaam nahi karna, lekin the boss will have a completely different opinion. Okay, so the point is that not impressing the boss. The point is that how well, like what we put in terms of a people leader, because this is going to be the reality, yeah. This is going to be the reality, because as you move forward, you will be one day, becoming the boss of some of your seniors and some of your peers. How are you building that entire, stature for yourself is going to be very important. Like what Pradeep is saying, people can choose. I mean, they can choose to be with you or choose not to be with you. But this is very important. So how well are you able to build this virtue is going to be very important. And which is where I'm coming from, the point that if you have not read the 7 habits, please read it, because it will give you tremendous amount of insights. I'm telling you, you can just relate at whatever stage in life you are, you will be able to relate both in personal and professional life.
Thanks, Vatsanji, for adding those thoughts. And I'm actually picking on a specific word, Pradeep, that you mentioned, a toxic boss. And that's where a shift that I was thinking that is required. And I've had experiences of having multiple bosses in my life, although the toxicity was not as high for me to leave. But there could be toxicity, and it could be from both sides actually. And the toxicity from an employee side is on the blocker side. The blockers are toxic to the entire organization. The blockers are toxic to the supervisor also. The blockers are toxic to the rest of the team also. Now, if one has to rally all these people around, one is to being aware of it. The second is to navigate this journey from being an employee to having an owner's mindset. And it's more so because as a CEO, one of the things that one has to deal with is this complexity of dealing with different people like you, me, and everyone else, right? And the second is to still get the job done. With that in mind, what are the shifts that, one has to look forward to, saying that, from being an employee today and thinking like an employee about my channel, etc., to have a larger perspective of a CEO, which then looks more like, an owner. A CEO has multiple channels, various dynamics to look at and manage the balance between that. What are the mindset shifts that, one has to make from that perspective? Is that a question I'd like to put to both of you?
Yeah, so it's a good question, Sunil. In fact, finally, at the end of the day, when you talk about ownership in leadership, it involves taking initiative, being accountable, and caring about the outcome as much as the owner of the company. Okay, it is like I am running my own company, and it's important from that point, because that owner is actually, or there may be promoters, there may be shareholders, there may be owners. All of them are trusting in you to run the company, and you look at it as your own. So, I mean, I was thinking about some ways leaders can demonstrate ownership. How do you demonstrate ownership? I mean, there are about six points that I can think about. The first is take responsibility. I mean, personal responsibility for actions, interactions, and everyday behaviors. ऐसा नहीं कि मतलब like कल किसी के ऊपर डाल दिया. I mean, we have heard Rohit Sharma saying that it was my call, that it was my mistake, that on the day one I should not have taken batting, and because of which. So that comes for a beautiful leadership. It's not that some batsmen were like completely like they were told that you guys did not do well, but he took responsibility of that. Second is be decisive. Leaders should be decisive and solve problems. Okay, that is very important. Otherwise, तो क्या होता है कि indecision will lead to a rot actually. Okay, so be decisive. Third is this is very important. Delegate tasks and not responsibility. You can delegate tasks, but finally at the end of the day you are responsible for it, and you can't put that to somebody who's nahi kiya, because finally you are responsible for the entire thing. You are delegating tasks. This is a very, very important thing. The fourth one is that leaders need to reflect. This is something which वो तो टाइम निकालना चाहिए अपने को रिफ्लेक्ट करने के लिए. एट द एंड ऑफ ईच इवेंट, एट द एंड ऑफ ईच स्ट्रैटेजी आपने जो इम्प्लीमेंट किया, एग्जीक्यूट किया, आई थिंक सवाल तो पूछना चाहिए कि बॉस, आई मीन ये मैंने इम्प्लीमेंट किया, ये कैसा गया, कैन आई डू दिस अगेन, व्हाट आर सम ऑफ द थिंग्स दैट डिड नॉट गो वेल. ये perfectly, we need to do this. We need to take the time off and do this. This is something that normally अपना हड़बड़ी में हम लोग करते नहीं है. We just go from one thing to the other and we don't even reflect. And उसमें क्या होता है कि we miss out on a lot of learnings actually. Okay. The fifth thing is accept failures. Okay. Why I say this is that the moment you justify something, then you are not going to correct it, because you are going to put the blame on completely external factors. I mean, I'm just saying that if I'm losing market share to some company, I should accept. I mean, I don't know many people who accept I'm losing market share, because the moment you don't accept it, then the rest of the things doesn't happen. But if I openly say that was I'm losing market share, okay, then you get into it was who is like taking it on. What are they doing differently that we are not doing? All this will come into. Okay, so accepting failures is extremely important. And the last one is explain the big picture. I mean, we have a team. It's very important to explain the big picture. It cannot be a Chinese whisper. It becomes very difficult if it becomes a Chinese whisper, because if you are even in the middle management role, you still have a larger team. Last man standing is the front line. हम लोग head office में जो बात करते हैं वो अगर front line नहीं उसको समझ में नहीं आया, तो then we are talking two different things. Okay, so just summarizing it, I'm just saying that ways that leaders can demonstrate ownership. One is take responsibility, be decisive, delegate tasks but not responsibility, reflect, accept failures, explain the big picture. These are the ones that I would actually articulate as taking ownership actually.
Very insightful, Vatsanji. I think so, and I believe in this one very strongly, which is reflect and take ownership and accountability of failures. Because there's a saying in leadership that if there is a failure, look into the mirror, and if there is success, look outside the window and thank your team. So that's a brilliant point that you've made. That's how you rally around, and especially to this point, the ones who like you and to what Pradeep ji mentioned, they will any which ways rally around you. the ones who don't like you, unless you reflect and act on the failures and hold yourself accountable, take feedback. Those are the ones saying, "मैं तो कह ही रहा था." I didn't like this person. Anyways, I knew that this is going to happen. And then there are these blockers who will suddenly say that the other three parties have already aligned with this guy. Let me not keep blocking you. So brilliant points. I think so those are some management techniques and tools that you've given us as a toolbox. Thank you, Vasanji. Pradeep ji, on these points, if I may now invite you to talk about, what are the points that resonate with you, and there is that you think that to demonstrate an owner's mindset and a CEO's mindset. In your experience, you handle the position of a CEO, and in I think so in Raymond's, if I may remember correctly. So that transition that you had to make and to build that ownership in the teams below you. As a CEO, when you grow, you would also want people under you to actually also start behaving and acting with a growth and an owner's mindset. So what are the attributes that you think are required, and how did you drive them?
Good. I think a little while ago you spoke about this channel conflict and stuff like that. I guess that's what most people would be interested in, right? With Q-commerce and Flipkart also jumping.
And if you can maybe add pricing to it.
Yeah. So that's the most interesting topic. अब देखो भाई, ये तो अभी सच्चाई है that ये तो होना ही है. Whether you accept it, not accept it, quick commerce is reality. Quick commerce will grow. E-commerce will grow. Modern trade will continue to grow, maybe not at the rate it was in the past, but वो तो grow करेगा. So the fact is, if you are in a general trade business, there is no point sitting and crying over it. पहले तो इसको accept कर लो कि भाई ऐसे ही है. Now if you become the CEO, क्या आप quick commerce बंद कर दोगे? नहीं कर सकते. So now there is no point in fighting. Second, I always tell a lot of people, देखो अपना जो काम है ना, बॉस को खुश रखना, and ऐसे खुश रखना make his life easier. There is a target that he's trying to drive. If you help him do that, you are successful. Right? That's what I meant by this. So, a couple of things that you can do in this. One is to say that let me not target a certain channel salience. For example, to say e-commerce has to be 30% of my business. That is not the idea. E-commerce will grow. E-commerce is also serving certain set of consumers. Modern trade is serving certain set of consumers, and GT is also serving. So you have a large portfolio of GT business. I think most businesses would have anywhere between 50 to 70% of general trade in the FMCG space at least. And उसमें काफी expansion का scope है. So go and focus on what expansion can you do. When I say expansion, there are 2-3 expansions. One is the geographic expansion that you can do, or you can get into product portfolio expansion, which is there are SKUs जो e-commerce में बिकेगा नहीं या quick commerce में बिकेगा नहीं. 10 rupee soap, for example. A 10 rupee soap in general trade is very attractive, or a 10 rupees price point is very attractive. Quick commerce वाले 10 rupees पे ध्यान नहीं देते, because जितना वो lower price SKU लेके आएंगे उनके लिए profitability कम हो जाता है. So you kind of get certain SKUs for general trade, certain SKUs for modern trade. You can go and tell your senior management, you create SKUs which are large, differentially priced, differentially grammed and ml, etc. for quick commerce, so that there is no conflict between a general trade retailer or a distributor versus a e-commerce company. Finally, I think it's about forecasting for reality. General trade is not expected to grow beyond a single digit. That's the reality of life now. But quick commerce is expected to grow at 40-50%. पर कई बार क्या होता है कि फोरकास्ट या फिर टारगेट्स उल्टे होते हैं. हम जनरल ट्रेड वाले को बोलते हैं कि आप 20% ग्रो करो, क्विक कॉमर्स वाले को हम 20% टारगेट देते हैं, वो 40% करता है, ओवर अचीव करता है. ये जो बेचारा 20% जीटी में लेके बैठा रहता है, इसका नंबर होता नहीं. And that's where I think you need to solve for it and say, boss, I think GT will continue to grow at 5 to 7% or 8%. Quick commerce will grow at 40%. Overall organization will grow at 15-20%. That's the way to kind of negotiate this. Right? And that's a
thank you, Pradeep. Thank you very much.
And on the
I think so from an owner's mindset, the expansion into new geographies, the expansion into the product categories that one can look at is something that we are taking away in this. Thanks very much for that.
One last line, Sunil, on this, which is as leaders, what I find is leadership is like parenting, right? Not everybody wants to become a parent. Not everybody becomes a great parent, and some of you can choose to become a parent. Some of you can choose not to become a parent. The issue or the solution there is, it is a skill, right? Parenting is a choice that you have. Likewise, leadership is also a choice that you have. अगर आपको स्किल डेवलप करना है आप कर सकते हो. You just need to put that effort and say कि मैं ये डेवलप करूँगा. And that's what, and it doesn't come from titles and designation. And I'll end with a small story. I work with Godrej, and as I enter the Godrej colony or the office space, every day there's a security guy. I've been seeing him for the last 20 odd years. He has a smile every day morning. He's on the morning duties most often. He has a smile every day morning. He kind of, between a salute and a Ashirwad, his hand is like this. You don't know whether Ashirwad de raha hai or salute kar raha hai. And I stop for a few seconds, slow down my car, wind down my window, look at him, and he does that every day, smiles. He's a watchman and he's been there for 20 years. Look at the impact. And I've checked with this many people in the organization. Aapne usko notice kiya? Everybody says the same thing. Yeah, he has a great smile on his face. He kind of wishes you, blesses you, whatever you want to think you are. And that's power, that's leadership, right? He's standing there at the gate. बारिश हो या मतलब धूप हो, फर्क नहीं पड़ता उनको, but that smile is always there. So that's leadership to me, and I tell people, you have to be that watchman to many people. अगर आप वो कर सकते हो, then you are a great leader and people are willing to follow you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Pradeep. Very insightful thoughts from Vaksan ji and Pradeep ji. I think so. In the interest of time, while we would have loved to have insights from you, but मेरा एक favorite saying है, मैं गुजरा हुआ वक्त नहीं हूँ कि लौट के आना सकूँ. So we'll possibly have more opportunities for both of you to come and interact with the team here. But I would now like to open the floor for our participants to have any questions to our panelists. It will be helpful for getting their insights. Praveen ji, I can see a raise of hand. I saw a raise of hand a little earlier also. वो थक के finally उन्होंने शायद नीचे कर लिया.
Arpan was there.
Yeah, so after Praveen ji, we can get the other thing who was wanting to ask a question.
Yeah, it was me.
Yes,
I have re-raised my hand once again.
Arpan, my apologies. We were very engaged in that
Yeah, in the
so
flow.
I
saw the flow was on, and that's why I lowered that.
So Praveen ji, with your permission, Arpan ji से पहले ले लें.
Yeah.
Okay, Arpan ji, over to you.
Yeah. So I had a query about the VUCA situation that you had mentioned. I actually had a couple of queries and I'll tell both of them in the single flow. Firstly, while yes, VUCA was something that would always be a part of our lives, the accelerating pace of technological progress somewhere has, maybe made, maybe intensified VUCA to a different degree altogether. I mean, we are all seeing how technology is changing its pace. Like Moore's law says that a chip will double its efficiency every couple of years. So with this in mind, and how do we prepare ourselves for the future where nothing that no template of the past might possibly work, because it will be so uncertain. I mean, if we see the last 5-7 years, Nodebandi, COVID, none of those things which were experienced. So the last Nodebandi was experienced in the 70s. The last pandemic was during World War I. Such a wide-scale pandemic. So how do we, prepare ourselves
for faster pace?
Might
faster
come in
pace
the
of changes. Yeah. Thanks, Arpan, for asking. So Pradeep ji, Vaksan ji.
Arpan, I have a very interesting way of addressing this. Okay. Now, other day I was listening to a podcast, by Jeff Bezos. Okay, very interesting. Jeff Bezos says that today entrepreneurs invest on future, right? And the future is very uncertain. You don't know what future is, kya hoga. So you always hear that 90% of those things fail, only the startups fail, and all of that. He was talking about how he goes about investing, and I found it very, very interesting. He says that he always goes into understanding. एक तो VUCA के पीछे सब लोग पड़े हैं, लेकिन ये business में what is it that is not going to change? Okay, and he consistently invests on what is it that's not changing, and this was the biggest insight for me. Okay, now what he says is that he says that time immemorial, customer will always look at value for money. This is something that I want, and I need to get at the best price. This is not going to change forever. So with the changing times, he is consistently investing in that. how do I make it cheaper? How do I make it, value for the customer? So that will call for investing in AI, that will call for investing in technology, that will call for investing in all of that. And this is the way he has become just because he is. So many people are now running after the VUCA world. Okay, but he's saying that VUCA world hai, but VUCA world is also happening in what will not change. So how do I invest in that? And this is a beautiful answer that I got actually. Going into, and now when I talk about paint industry that I am there, I can clearly state that which are some of the things which will never change.
Yeah.
But how I address that will always change. Okay. Relationships will not change in any business. Then how do I continue to maintain that an engagement and relationship is where I have to invest in. Okay, so that is a very interesting way of addressing that.
Thank you, Vatsanji. In fact, there's a book by the name of called Same as Ever.
Yeah.
And it talks about what doesn't change. It's greed doesn't change, fear doesn't change. Those are emotions. Need for trust, definitely. Thank you very much, Vatsanji. Praveenji, over to you for your question.
Hi. I wanted to understand how do we do the homework for showing that bigger picture. That can you tell some? I work as a channel head for modern trade and e-com, and also I want to show a bigger picture to my management. So what sort of homework should I do so that whatever the presentation I do, it is a little concrete?
Good question. I guess you are in a consumer facing industry, right?
Yeah.
And modern trade. See, what is happening in India is we thought modern trade started with a 5-10% kind of salience. 10 साल पहले 10% business used to come from modern trade. It became 15. In best case, in some companies it would be around 30-40%, right? और हमें लगा कि modern trade will take over the GT business, right? और वो इंडिया में हुआ नहीं. We have straight away gone to the digital era. We have straight away gone to the e-commerce business. Now the e-commerce is evolving in a very big way. Now the point here is, अगर आपको big picture दिखाना है, तो you have to map it out as to what will happen in the industry. कितने players रहेंगे first of all, right? अगर आप typically आप देखोगे retail space में it is D-Mart and Reliance and so on and so forth. 10 साल बाद इसमें से कितने player रहेंगे? Will it become a 2-player industry? Will it be only D-Mart and Reliance in the India space? 2. What will happen to the modern trade space itself? Will it continue to have that 30-40% salience, or will it degrow with quick commerce gaining space? What will happen to between these 3 channels? General trade, modern trade, and the e-commerce or new age channels. इन तीनों का संगम जब होगा, ये किस shape में दिखेगा 10 साल बाद? That's a big picture that you need to evaluate based on whichever company you work, whichever industry you work. You will be able to map this out and say, this is where I see modern trade going for us. This is where I see e-commerce going for us. And there is a omni-channel business, which is where I think modern trade will supply. Say, for example, D-Mart का जो quick mart business है, right? It's a confluence of e-commerce and modern trade. So there is a reshaping happening in the business there. That's a big picture that you're looking at.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Pradeep. Abhishek, 5 seconds for the question. I think so in the interest of time.
Yeah, thanks for taking my question. So since I am in a sales development role and I'm working in Imami, and several times I used to face the problem because I have to run the sales development agenda, other expansion agenda, and people in the organization or maybe the distributors are in the organization are very orthodox kind of having thinking. So what is the way of to overcome these kind of VUCA in our daily life, or in maybe in this kind of sales
behavior of people around you?
Yeah.
I think it's an FMCG question, right, Abhishek?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So, first thing, I don't envy your role because it's an individual contributor role, right? And it's a big struggle. So, if you're doing well, I think God bless you. The way to kind of succeed in this is what everybody looks forward to is what is in it for me. कई बार लोग उसको मना करते हैं क्योंकि they don't see benefit for themselves. Say for example, a team member, you're changing incentive structure, you're changing the ways of working. The person doesn't see what is in his interest in that. मेरा क्या होगा उसमें? Similarly, a distributors will respond to you positively when they see benefit in what you're trying to do. And very often, let me tell you, and sorry for putting it that way, is कि कंपनी की तरफ से हम जो करते हैं ना, हम कंपनी का ही सोचते हैं, कभी डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर का सोचते नहीं है, कभी टीम मेंबर का सोचते नहीं है. If you start empathizing and put that on the picture, right, then they're very happy to accept it. Say for example, I'll tell you, when you talk about stock and replenishment, for example, replenishment does not reduce distributor stock. Replenishment is just a scientific way of, sending the right SKU to the right distributor. उसका फायदा है उसमें, बट हम कभी वो सोचते नहीं है. हम तो ये सोचते हैं कि डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर को जितना माल ज़्यादा दे, 1/3 में जितना माल उसको प्राइमरी करे. That's how companies operate. It's a shift in mentality as to what is in their benefit that will help you solve it.
Yeah, thank you, Pradeep ji. Thank you very much. In the interest of time, I think so. I already overshot my time, and Manisha is going to kill me for that. But I think so. It was an interesting discussion going on. I thought I'll leverage on that time. So Pradeep ji and Vatsan ji, thank you really, really very much for the insightful conversation that we've had with you. I think there are some great takeaways that I have noted them down, and I'm sure I was seeing a lot of participants taking them down. They may have a lot of more questions. We will send it across to you through Manisha ji. If time permits, we can actually take it forward from there. But thank you very much once again for joining us on this panel discussion. We've had some very, very exciting moments with each one of you. Thank you very much. Manisha ji, over to you.
Thanks, Sunil. Thanks, Manisha ji. Thanks, Srivatsan sir.
Thank you, Sunil.